Hello. Today we're starting a series on Jupiter and the signs. Jupiter is usually described as luck, growth, expansion, and abundance. That's true, but it doesn't go far enough. In a chart, Jupiter shows how you grow beyond your current limits. It describes your instinct for expansion, your relationship to possibility, your beliefs about what life can offer you, and the way you move toward meaning, opportunity, and experience. It also shows how you handle increase, how you respond when life opens up, and how comfortable you are with taking up more space. This is why Jupiter is not only about luck. It's about perspective. It's about belief. It's about what you trust, what you expect, and what you think is possible for you. Two people can be given the same opening and respond in completely different ways. One leans in immediately and sees potential. Another hesitates, doubts it, or assumes it won't lead anywhere. That difference is not random. Jupiter explains it. The sign Jupiter is in shows how that expansion happens. It changes the tone, the direction, and the way growth expresses itself. Some Jupiter placements grow through action and risk. Others grow through patience and consistency. Some expand through knowledge, others through faith, others through relationships, others through testing limits and gaining direct experience. The same applies to success, confidence, and opportunity. Jupiter describes what you naturally place your faith in, where you tend to expect more, and where you may either overreach or hold yourself back. It often shows where life wants to open for you, and where excess, exaggeration, or misplaced confidence can create problems if the placement is not understood clearly. In the natal chart, the sign gives the style, the house shows the area of life, and the aspects modify how easily, strongly, or unevenly Jupiter operates. So this series focuses on the sign first. We're going to look at how Jupiter behaves in each sign, how it seeks growth, what it trusts, what it amplifies, and where it tends to create both opportunity and imbalance when it isn't handled consciously. No cliches, no flattened meanings, no easy one-word definitions, just how the placement actually works. And if you enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and book a consultation with me if you want to understand exactly how this placement affects your personal chart. Jupiter in Leo. Jupiter in Leo grows through self-expression, creative presence, and the willingness to take up space without shrinking. This is a placement that does not expand by staying hidden. It expresses. It shows up. It brings something from within outward and allows it to be seen. Because Leo is not concerned with blending into the background. It is concerned with bringing something to life. And when Jupiter is here, growth comes from allowing that expression to exist fully. Not holding back. Not dimming it. Not waiting for perfect approval. There's a natural instinct here to move toward visibility, but not in a superficial way. In a creative way. Something emerges, and the reaction is to express it. An idea forms, and the person wants to bring it into the world. A feeling builds, and it looks for a way to be shared, performed, or embodied. This creates a different kind of momentum. And momentum here is expressive, radiant, and tied to presence. Because Jupiter in Leo often learns by engaging with life through creation and performance, not by staying behind the scenes. This is one of its defining characteristics. Understanding comes through expression. Clarity comes from putting something out there and seeing how it lives. Confidence builds through visibility, not withdrawal. That can make this placement bold, sometimes even magnetic. But more accurately, it is comfortable allowing itself to be seen as it develops. And that opens doors. Opportunities tend to appear when the person is expressing, creating, leading, or sharing something that comes from them. Not when they hide. Not when they minimize their presence, when they are visible, when they are engaged, when they allow their energy to be felt. This can create a life pattern where progress happens through creative risk and personal expression. Because expression creates impact. Impact creates recognition, and recognition leads to expansion. Now, one of the strengths of Jupiter in Leo is its ability to generate confidence. Not just seek it, generate it. It does not always need external validation to begin. It can create its own sense of direction, its own sense of worth, its own reason to move forward. That makes it powerful in a very specific way. not dependent, but self-affirming. It does not require perfect conditions to express. It creates expression even when conditions are uncertain. And that is important because many opportunities in life come from being willing to show what you have before everything is perfected. Jupiter in Leo does that naturally. It creates, it shares, it takes creative risks. And through that, it often finds itself in positions where it can grow simply because it allowed itself to be seen. There is usually a strong belief here in the value of individuality, a sense that what you bring matters, that your voice matters, that your presence has impact, and very often that belief becomes reality. This placement does not naturally assume that it should stay small. It tends to believe that life responds to those who are willing to participate fully. And that worldview can create a very strong relationship with confidence. You do not wait until you feel ready. You express anyway. You do not hide what you have. You develop it in real time. That is very Leo. And with Jupiter here, that instinct becomes larger, stronger, and more central to the life path. Now, this is part of why Jupiter in Leo can seem lucky. From the outside, people may say things like they always get attention or things seem to come to them. But a lot of that so-called luck comes from visibility, from showing up, from being willing to express when others hesitate, from taking creative risks that place them in positions where opportunities can actually find them. That matters, because many opportunities in life come to those who are seen. Jupiter in Leo often makes itself visible, not randomly, naturally, and sometimes that alone creates advantage. This placement also tends to have a strong relationship to creativity, not only in artistic fields. In life itself, a situation becomes meaningful when it allows expression. A goal becomes engaging when it involves personal input. A path becomes worth following when it feels alive, not mechanical. This is one of the reasons Jupiter in Leo can become highly motivated when there is room to create, lead, or contribute something unique. It likes bringing things to life. It likes shaping experience. It likes the feeling of turning an idea into something that exists in the world, of making something visible that did not exist before. But this is also where imbalance can appear. Because when expression becomes tied to identity, external response can start to matter too much. Recognition can become necessary rather than supportive. Validation can become the measure of worth instead of something that simply reflects it. So one of the key lessons here is learning the difference between expression and performance, because they are not the same. Expression is authentic. Performance can become dependent. Expression creates fulfillment. Performance seeks approval. And Jupiter in Leo becomes far more effective when it expresses because it wants to, not because it needs a response. That awareness matters, not because it should become invisible, but because its power is strongest when it is self-sustained. This placement does not need less visibility. It needs grounded visibility. Visibility that comes from truth, not from chasing attention. Otherwise, life can become a cycle of seeking recognition without fully feeling fulfilled by it. A series of moments that look successful, but do not feel stable internally. A series of expressions that are shaped by reaction rather than intention. That can happen here, because Leo loves being seen. Being seen has energy in it. Recognition has energy in it. Creative response has energy in it. But staying connected to why you are expressing in the first place becomes essential. So one important part of maturity with Jupiter and Leo is learning that authenticity creates stronger impact than approval ever will. Now, in terms of belief, this placement tends to trust self-expression itself. It believes that bringing something from within outward has value. That life responds to creativity. That taking up space is not a problem, but a necessary part of living fully. There is often a strong sense that holding back limits growth, and that belief can be very empowering. It creates courage, because even when something is uncertain, the response is not to disappear. It is to show up, to try, to express. Difficulty here is often seen as something to move through creatively, not something to retreat from completely. And that keeps energy active. There is often a refusal to stay hidden for too long, a refusal to become passive in the face of life. The person may feel doubt, hesitation, or insecurity at times, but those states often push them back into expression rather than withdrawal. That is one of the hidden strengths of this placement. It restores confidence by engaging. It rebuilds direction by creating, not necessarily by waiting. Creative movement itself becomes part of the solution, but this can also create a shadow pattern, because if expression is always the answer, the person may overlook the need for reflection. They may act without checking alignment. They may express in ways that are reactive rather than intentional, and eventually that can create instability. The same pattern of seeking response repeating. The same cycle of high visibility followed by internal doubt. So growth also involves learning that expression is most powerful when it is grounded in self-awareness. The lesson is not stop expressing. The lesson is know why you are expressing. Now, another important aspect of Jupiter in Leo is how it relates to leadership. This placement usually prefers to take initiative in a visible way, to guide, to inspire, to create direction that others can follow. That does not mean it dominates, but it tends to function best when it has space to lead through presence rather than control. In environments where that is allowed, it can thrive, it can energize, it can motivate, it can bring enthusiasm into spaces that would otherwise feel flat. But in environments that are restrictive, overly critical, or suppressive of individuality, frustration can build. Because this placement is not designed to stay hidden. It is designed to contribute visibly. There is usually very little tolerance here for environments that shut down expression, limit individuality, or treat creativity as unnecessary. That kind of atmosphere can make Jupiter in Leo disengage, not because it lacks ability, but because it lacks space to express it. In work, Jupiter in Leo often does well in roles that involve creativity, leadership, or visibility. Performance, entrepreneurship, creative industries, leadership positions, anything where personal expression plays a role. Even within structured environments, it tends to gravitate toward positions where it can contribute something original rather than follow rigid repetition indefinitely. Because suppression is one of the few things that truly limits this placement. Not lack of talent, not lack of opportunity, suppression. Now, another layer here has to do with identity. Jupiter in Leo often gives the person a strong instinct to define themselves through what they create, but that identity is not always stable early on. Sometimes it comes out as confidence. Sometimes it comes out as overcompensation. Sometimes it comes out as I need to prove something. And surprisingly often, that works in the short term. But identity here becomes much more powerful when it is not tied only to external response. Because there is a difference between confidence and validation. Confidence says, I know what I bring. Validation says, tell me what I am worth. That distinction matters because Jupiter amplifies. And in Leo, it can amplify creativity, but it can also amplify ego if it is not grounded. The person may take things personally. They may react strongly to criticism. They may attach their sense of worth to how they are received. This is especially important in moments where detachment would create clarity, where feedback would improve expression, or where patience would allow something to develop more fully. So one of the deeper tasks of this placement is learning how to keep its natural confidence while creating enough stability to support it. Not less expressive, not less visible, just more centered. Now, in relationships, this placement tends to value warmth, engagement, presence. It prefers connections that feel alive, expressive, and emotionally responsive rather than distant or passive. There is often a desire for connection that includes appreciation, not superficial admiration, but genuine recognition. It often appreciates people who see it clearly, who respond, who engage, that can make this placement generous in connection, loyal, expressive, capable of bringing energy and life into relationships. But here again, balance matters, because the same need for recognition can sometimes become dependency on it, or sensitivity to how it is received. Not every moment needs to be affirmed. Not every silence means rejection. So part of growth here is learning how to maintain that natural openness while also allowing space for others to exist without constant feedback. Not withdrawing, but stabilizing. That is a major maturity point. learning that connection is strongest when it is not dependent on constant validation. There can also be a strong attraction here to creativity, warmth, and presence in relationships. Something has to feel alive. There often needs to be energy, not emotional flatness, not constant distance, not a connection that feels inactive. Jupiter in Leo usually wants relationship to feel like something is happening. That can be beautiful when it creates excitement, engagement, and genuine connection. But it can become unstable if the person starts confusing intensity with depth, or if they lose interest when things become steady rather than stimulating. So once again, the lesson returns. Not everything meaningful is dramatic. Some things grow quietly, and the person has to learn how to recognize that. Now, one of the deeper themes with Jupiter and Leo is creative identity, because Leo is connected to self-expression, to individuality, to the act of bringing something into existence. And when Jupiter is here, growth is closely tied to becoming more fully expressed. Not a version shaped entirely by reaction, not a version that hides behind hesitation, a version that creates, that shows, that participates. This can be incredibly empowering because it places the source of expansion in the person's willingness to express what is already within them, not outside. But it also requires responsibility because when you are visible, you are also influencing what you create. This placement often learns that expression is not just about being seen. It is about what you are showing. And that is where maturity deepens the placement. Because early on, Jupiter in Leo can believe that attention equals success. Later, it often learns that impact matters more than attention, that what you create is more important than how quickly it is noticed. This is where the placement becomes much more powerful, because then expression is no longer reactive. It is intentional, and intentional expression changes everything. At its highest expression, Jupiter in Leo does not just seek attention. It creates something worth paying attention to. It becomes the energy that brings life into spaces, the person who inspires, the one who leads through presence rather than force, the one who reminds others that self-expression is not something to hide from. That is one of the gifts here. It can bring energy into stagnant environments. It can restore creativity where things have become mechanical. It can create movement where there was hesitation. It can remind people that sometimes growth requires visibility. There is something deeply life-affirming about that. Because Leo trusts expression. It trusts what happens when something is brought into the light. It trusts that life expands when it is fully lived. And Jupiter here amplifies that trust. The person may become someone who not only expresses for themselves, but creates space for others to do the same. Someone who leads by example. Someone who shows what it looks like to take up space without apology. That can make this placement highly impactful when it is mature. Not because it demands attention, but because it generates it naturally. At its best, Jupiter in Leo creates expansion through self-expression, creativity, and the willingness to be fully present in life. It opens paths by stepping into visibility. It creates opportunities by expressing what is real. It builds confidence by doing, not by waiting. And when this placement is working well, it does not just shine. It creates light. It turns creativity into direction, confidence into stability, and presence into something that actually creates momentum instead of dependency. It learns that expression is strongest when it is authentic, that visibility is most powerful when it is grounded, and that the life it wants is rarely going to arrive through staying hidden. It will arrive because it allowed itself to be seen. And that is where its real strength comes from. And if you enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and book a consultation with me if you want to understand exactly how Jupiter in your chart is affecting you personally.